Happy spring, my friends, and welcome to our April 2025 Easter egg extravaganza! Before I get started, please excuse my voice if it crackles. I am apparently fighting bronchitis this time. For my first Easter egg hunt this month, I decided who better than Moon Knight's mysterious man behind the scenes, Jake Lockley. This guy is kind of an Easter egg in and of itself because he only gets less than 5 minutes of screen time in the whole series. The Moon Knight creators actually displayed a lot of genius with the layered visuals in this show, using mind-bending mirrors depicting the inner chaos of Steven's mind. Also, do remember that budget constraints on this show made every detail incredibly deliberate. I first published this on my blog, but I truly think that this theory needs visuals for you to understand what's going on. So, let's review the overlooked details that reveal just where Jake fits into this dysfunctional system. First and foremost, let's look at the show's use of mirrors, because what better way to explore the chaos of talking to your own mind than through a physical representation of that? For example, they use this in the scene where Steven first enters the storage locker. As he opens the bag on the cot and goes to sort through the contents, his reflection in the mirror is not matching his actions. This is obviously entertaining, but it also serves a much greater purpose to show you that it's not just Steven in there. If you notice, Jake only appears fleetingly in these mirror scenes. He rarely officially takes over the host body like Mark and Steven do. These brief appearances are very important to note though, because he emerges only when Steven is in peril. Mark, being a capable fighter, can fend for himself. Steven, not so much. If you watch very carefully, you do get a glimpse of Jake in episode 1 as Steven shifts into the main altar. Mark's incapacity, having knocked himself out after jumping through a window, left Steven and Jake to navigate the predicament. Steven is characterized as a magnet for danger, so he was aided by Jake, who actively intervened to shield him from threats. Jake was the one pulling Steven's hand away from danger. Jake was the one who killed the cult members. Jake was the one who stepped in to drive the getaway truck. Curiously, Jake never lingers as the host. Once he handles the immediate danger, he just simply relinquishes control back to whoever was in charge originally. Another obvious time that we see Jake take over the body is in episode 3, when Mark is incapacitated by henchmen again, leaving Steven vulnerable. Mark was dragged out of sight, a clear indication that they intended to eliminate him quietly. Jake stepped in to ensure survival, using violence not out of malice, but only as a means of protection. In episode 2, Mark and Steven engage in a heated argument in front of a pyramid-shaped mirror on a rooftop. This culminates in Mark stomping the glass until it's completely shattered and you can barely see anything. There's a fleeting moment that you see someone in the mirror that looks just super pissed and is glaring at Mark, but when the camera pans back to Mark, the person in the mirror is more out of breath than Mark was. Jake also appears to have taken an interest in the romantic pursuits of his counterparts because he's gotta be the one who asked out the coworker. Although it is very unclear whether he's adopting a fake English accent or if she's just completely oblivious to the situation. So, is Crawley relaying information to the other personalities, or are they just tuning in every now and then? They might actually have to, because Steven likes to fall asleep randomly, so the other two probably have to step in to take over at those times. Which takes us to the asylum scene in episode 4, which is after they're shot by Harrow. Mark in the wheelchair, he's searching for Steven, doesn't know where he is. So when you look in the reflection, you can see Jake instead of Mark looking back. Those furious eyes are just unmistakable, and it's also evident that he has some kind of resentment towards Mark, but they never clarify what it is. What's interesting about the Asylum episode is that each altar interacts with Dr. Harrow, showcasing the respective responses of fight, flight, and freeze, even if it's not in that particular order. Even the setup of that scene is very layered. The Asylum represents the memories, right? Boat is above, and then Harrow's office is situated somewhere below. The circumstances under which each of them finds themselves in the interview is actually really different. So Mark inflicts harm upon himself to return, Jake endures the pain to escape, and Steven transitions in and out due to psychological trauma associated with his mother. If you watch very carefully, they all each have a moment that they snap and turn on Dr. Harrow. Jake runs when Harrow asks about the boy from his past. Mark reacts when Steven is mentioned, and Steven snaps when Harrow brings up their mother's death. Now, let's consider the core memory here. Young Mark and Randall were playing pretend in the forest, with Steven trailing behind them. This may seem like just a simple childhood scene, but it holds so much significance in how these characters perceive one another. Even in the colors of their costume, there are visual cues that are kind of essential for understanding these dynamics. Randall, dressed in the blues and bright colors, was reminiscent of what Steven wore very early in the series. It symbolizes the cautious younger brother, following Mark into danger without considering his own safety. Mark, wearing neutral colors, jumps into peril without a second thought, inadvertently bringing his brother along. Now consider the adult Steven. He's wearing black. Jake is the only character that is consistently wearing black throughout the entire show. By my count, Jake only takes over 3 times, which is pretty impressive considering how chaotic things get. The first time is obviously episode 1 in the Alps. Next is episode 3, where he steps in to protect Mark and Steven from getting killed. And then there's episode 6, where he saves everybody. When you think about it, the show is practically a masterclass in the rule of 3. We have the pyramids, we have judge, jury, executioner trifecta, we have the good old id, ego, and superego, and then we have the classic trio of mind, heart, and gut. Honestly, we could do this all day. All of this brings me to the big mystery of who destroyed the hotel room in Cairo. Please ignore the naked man in the middle of the room for a second and focus on what matters. We have a smashed mirror, smashed table. One of them is drinking alcohol on the floor. The other one is sitting on the bed freaking out, and we have no idea what happened. Every reflective surface in this room is in pieces. Lamp, TV, mirror, random metal tray in the corner. Somebody clearly had an argument with himself, and it did not go very well. But it leads to my question. Is this Jake, or is this Mark? Based on what I've shared here, I want to know your thoughts, so make sure you drop a comment and let me know. As always, my friends, please like and subscribe. Thank you for dealing with my nasally voice this week. I will see you next time.